start recording. You're currently continuing recording system. Yes, continue recording.
This webinar is being recorded.
Hopefully this did not break anything. Cool, so thanks for joining. I really appreciate you being here. I hope that the topic about DevOps is interesting and something that you want to figure out how you're dealing with. So obviously quite a few are new to this, so that is pretty good, and looking forward to share a little more about what it is that we do. And obviously if you have attended before, we will probably be sharing a few other concepts and ideas and what is going on. Do use the Q&A if you have any comments or questions. Then yeah, share that with us there. Cool. So I want to talk about DevOps for Integration Suite. I think that is really an important topic for a lot of customers, because we need to deliver integration in a better way. A little about Figaf: we started doing automation of integration 7 years ago. We started out with a PI testing tool because that was really needed at that time. Then later SAP also created the PAT tool, much similar, but obviously I do think we have some things that makes that process a little smarter. Then we got into PI versioning, and this is a lot about what we will actually be covering today about the DevOps capability. We added transport to PI, we added the same set of features to CPI, and then 2 years ago we also did PI to CPI migrations, because yeah, that is what a lot of customers are doing and what is interesting for them to get started with. Yeah, so that's a little about it, but let's talk about what we'll cover, what we'll talk about today, and why is DevOps interesting. We'll talk about why it's challenging. We'll talk about what your new transport process could actually look like with the Figaf tool, and then we'll talk about how to get started with this. Good. So I created this survey, but maybe it's more important to get your input about why do you actually think that DevOps is interesting, because there's definitely a lot of insights about why we want to be using DevOps and what it what it entails. I think that started out with the release and integration was the biggest one without the quality, and then later the governance overtook these things. And I think this relates a lot to what you're trying to convey now, that it is about making it easier to do integration, do the governance. I think that is some valuable results on these things. And now I also need to publish it so you can see it. So this is the part about this. Yeah, so I think that is really some of the valuable reasons for it. So if we start talking about a DevOps project, there is definitely some things into it that makes this really interesting, and some of the things that you need to have here. So some of the components of a DevOps project would be CPI, a cloud integration knowledge. It is about DevOps knowledge, and I think one of the challenges that you'd often see is you have the DevOps team that knows how to make Java code and deploy it and manage it, and then you have the CPI team, and those two are different entities that have different way of working, and that needs to tie together with where you're spending time on this, and you would also need to use a number of different tools here. Some of the resources, I do think that you can build a pretty good process to work with these scenarios. You should obviously be using Git, and I think that is one of the places or central areas for any project. One one blog post or blog series is Nurus Puras, SAP CPI CI/CD from here, zero to hero. That does cover a lot of all of these different things about how you get started, what's working on. You obviously, from SAP, they have Project Piper. They have a few Jenkins examples that you can use to build your process and understand how we can leverage these things. We do have the SAP Cloud Transport Management system that is going on, and that is also have some interesting aspects of it. But yeah, with a number of limitations. And then you need a lot of other tools to be a part of something like this. My take, and obviously this coming from someone that have created a tool to automate these things, so obviously take it with that as input. Yes, he is pretty cool. We had a good conversation with Noro. I'll just say here, live answer. And yeah, it is pretty hard to get started. It is something that you need to maintain as you are building along. You need to train new team members about this and how to get started with it. And then you obviously need to consider what's the most important thing that you can do. Is it to work on these integrations that you have, or is it all these other areas? And actually, I do think I have a poll also a little about what is the challenge that you think that or if there's some other challenges, just put them into the Q&A. I'll not show these things. So what do you think the challenge for implementing a project like this in your organization? Let me just take here so one of the things that I think is a little challenging is the notion that if you do DevOps, Git should be the center of the universe. This should be where everything is focusing on. And you're going to say, what's the source of the truth? Is it cloud integration or CPI? And I think let's just publish the result here. So yeah, we don't know how to build pipelines, and I think that is quite an accurate example here. And yeah, how do you do synchronization? Well, and I think this source of truth is one of the things that really sets this apart. You don't have a local, I can put my face on now. You don't have a local place where you can develop this integration. It is all mixed and matched between different areas that you need to work with. Then what happens, and what if you're committing this, what should then happen? And a lot of all other projects, and this is where, like with our Java team, that when they are merging and mixing, it is really easy. Well, you can see the evolution of what is going on, and I think that really makes it easier for me to understand what is going on. And then obviously also how's this moved into the next environment. And we did also create a few examples with Azure DevOps, and we were able to create some pipelines and run them. But well, it was also using our proprietary way of thinking, our APIs, etc., and that made some of these things a little more complicated than they needed to be. So I just want to show some of the ideas that would actually make it easier for you to work on this. This is the Figaf tool and our way of transporting. So we have bundled a large number of products into place that makes it easier for you to manage this. So this is the full DevOps tool. It's about governance, virtual tenants, transport process, configuration, Groovy editor, Git repository. So there's a lot of different components that come into play in this scenario. And these are the things that we want to be talking about. And then you want to be talking, okay, so how is it that I'm supposed to be running this? And I think the best place right now to be running the Figaf tool is to use the BTP Cloud Foundry. And there's a couple of reasons, and since you're here in the cloud integration scenario, if you're getting external developers to work on your CPI system, they would also need to have access to your CPI tenant. And then it is just about adding a few extra roles to them, and then they would have access to the Figaf tool. So managing the user makes it a lot easier to get access to these things. It is also something about, sometimes in organization it can be really challenging to first of all get a server to run a tool on, get a database, get all of these different things. And if you have in the integration team, you anyway have BTP, so it is pretty easy just to say I want to have another tenant where I can run these things on. One of the areas that I do see a lot is this virtual landscape. So you're probably familiar and you've been doing something similar like I have here, where you have an iFlow and then you have an underscore dev and an underscore QA, because you do not want to have two tenants to cover something area. I don't know, is that a familiar thing for you? But I've seen this a lot of places where we come up, yeah, we do already this thing, but the challenge is you cannot really transport, you have no way of governing that the developer just go in and change this this artifact and do something on it, and thereby it becomes really difficult to manage. And the developer that made this iFlow here can then go and make the change directly. Yeah, so obviously if you have the premium, then this is not really a problem. But then you would anyway have some of the other cases. But I hope that you have also seen some of the places where they just have two, or the other scenario down here where you have some kind of a project that needs to do specific testing for a success factors app that needs two other interfaces that run for two different tenants, etc. And that is also part of this virtual landscape. Thanks, Philip. Yes, it is. Yeah. Where do you go here? So, and then we talk about testing. I think this is also one of the areas that I see a lot of, well, as I see it, testing is really a crucial part of any development process. You are not done before things has been tested. And I do also have a poll on this one, just this thing. This is the last poll that we have. So why do you actually test, or who is actually responsible for testing? Because sometimes I've seen the people that the integration developer says, hey, it is the business user that needs to do the testing, or it is someone else that needs to do testing. And it's like, yeah, it's good, but I've also seen a lot of times when I've talked with business that they would create the invoice with one line that works, and they would not test the one where you know that it is going to cause some problems. And so this is obviously a problem, but I'm happy that everybody is testing their integration. They have some different levels of testing, and obviously no matter how well you automate this, you need different levels of testing. And I think the places where this makes sense is obviously to make sure that the things that you have done matters, or works. But also, if I were to get to support one of your interfaces, if I did not have a test case, I did not have a test message, I needed to figure out how do we actually talk about these things? How do we actually figure out how do I trigger this sales order or whatever orders? It may be in the process, it may be in some of the different tools and techniques that you can see. And obviously that is a challenge. If you do not have a place where I can trigger methods, it becomes difficult. And if you have that, the knowledge transfer becomes a lot easier. Good. There. Testing documentation obviously is also an important part of your landscape. You need to understand what is deployed, who made changes, what is it actually that we have here, and creating a lot of reports about what we have tested, what's going on in your landscape. We need to talk about monitoring. I don't think we have time to cover a lot of monitoring. We do have a lot of capabilities in monitoring to look and creating alerts, filtering deeps, sending messages through what is going on in your scenario. And we also soon have a new feature like the PI message monitor report, the one that shows you which messages has been processed per interface, so you can see what is the top interface producers, and then you can drill into those data. But let's show you what this could look like. Okay, so here we have the Figaf tool. It is a standalone Java application, and as I said, most likely you'll be running it in BTP Cloud Foundry because that is the easiest. Here we're just running on our local server. So I'm a developer. I got a request that someone said that this interface was not working and we needed to find a solution for it. And what I can do is I have a test case for it here. So I just, on this iFlow, I created a test case so we can search for the test case. So we have a test case here. We can take this test case and we can run on the instance that we have selected. So you can run the test case on multiple different instances to see if it is if it works differently on those different scenarios. So here we can see the testing result. And that means that we can also here in the tool see what's going on. And if we then switch on trace, we can see where in the process something was going on and what are the different messages. Obviously, you know CPI helper, we do integrate with that, making it a lot easier for doing changes and understanding what is going on. So I probably figured out that it is around here I need to make a change. So I will go into edit mode. I will make a change here because it seems like this is the thing that is holding us back to fix this issue that the business user wanted. So obviously you cannot see me there. So I'm just down here on the bottom changing this value. We say save as version, and now this is 201, and we can select OK, and we can select deploy, which would then deploy this. If we press synchronize here to the Figaf tool, we will take this version and move it into Figaf tool, making the transition a lot easier and give us insight about what is actually happening. So what I can do now as a user, I can go in here and I can check per these two versions of the Figaf tool, what was actually the difference here. And we can do that in a number of different ways. So we have this box here, we can expand it, and we can see there was a value here that was changed. So you can see if there's layout changes or whatever else is going on. We obviously also have it as code changes. So if you have Groovy changes, you have other things, it is easy to see and find the things that matters. And the challenge with doing normal diff on a BPMN model, it becomes really difficult or close to impossible to actually see what is being changed here. So that's the reason we normally say this is for all the other artifacts, then this, and we also have one for message mappings. Okay, so the thing is, I have made this change now on this object, and there was a business request for this. So my idea is I would select it here. I'll select assign to ticket, demo, webinar. 08, and we can then select the landscape. And here I will just select the virtual landscape that we have. We can have multiple different landscapes on it, and this is what you'd be using if you want to transport to different scenarios. And then you'd enter the Jira number, you'd enter the ServiceNow number. We do have a way you can do integration with those other tools, but I do think that this adds a lot of extra complexity. And if you just enter this Jira number, it is easy to go from Jira to Figaf and the other way around. And then let's say here we say save. So what I've done now is I have created a change. I have selected the iFlow that I want to do. We can attach all the artifacts that is important for this. Attach all the dependent artifacts, so we can see there's the package. That could be the script collections, the Java mappings, function libraries, the new objects. And we can see what are the versions. And the benefit of this is that when I go into my change view, I can see that it has been assigned here. If I look at my versioning, I would be able to see that this version has been assigned to this ticket, and then I can actually see it was because this Jira request, go into Jira and check it out and see what is going on. Questions, comments, put them into the Q&A. Yes. Okay, that was too far. I need to. So next thing is we have made our change and we want to check if it is okay. So we can look up the related test cases, and the idea is obviously you want to select all of the different test cases, but it does take a little extra to run a large number of test cases, and for showing this we only need one. But the idea is that you would have a number of different test cases, and we can then run these on a system and thereby make it to check that everything is correct. And if we go in here and view the result, we can see that we are testing with this version. If there was a different with it, we would then see that an error saying, hey, you're actually trying to test a wrong version. Please make sure that you understand that there's a problem here. So that would be the places where that makes sense. There's a question here if it warns colleagues if someone has changed a different object. No, we do not have that feature. One of the things you can do, so right now we can see that the testing there was an error here, which was totally expected. Here we can then see the diff, and we can see it is one of the properties that has been changed. What we can then do is we can say we want to update this. So update and drop all test cases, and that means that we can now run it again, and now we would have everything as just have valid test cases. So if I run it again, I should get an error. So some of the things that we do have to check who have made changes is in this landscape overview. Faster, I think it's called faster CPI. So we have the package here. We can see we have the different objects. So here's the object that we're working on. We can see that in this QA it has a different version, and it is deployed with error. So we have a lot of insight about the landscape and the progress from this report. But well, yeah, I guess the thing is that once you get into so here we can see we can open objects, and we can see here the go back to our ticket. The idea is it has a good configurations. It seems to be easy. You'll copy your configuration. I don't know what you mean with that. We are using an integration suite system for these things. But yeah, well, if you were to work on an object, you will check, I have this object, are there any tickets that is still in progress? And in this you can see the overview, you can see if it has been transported into production, or use this other overview. Philip, does that answer the question? I think that the challenge about notification would more be this about when should we notify the user that you're making a change to a specific object. And there's obviously the part where you have a project instance versus a productive instance. Here I would use the landscape report and say, okay, if I do have a project that is, I would increase the second number and say this is then version 1.2 or the first number, to say, have that as a way of distinguishing what project or which specific version this is a part of, and then you can roll back to previous versions and go back and forth between those as a part of this. Yes, good. So we have now run the test again. They are giving success. And that is all good. And thereby, next time I've run this, I would always have the ability to see that there is actually a testing result that made me do this, and all the test cases are always valid, so everybody knows what's going on. Good. Then we get to the transport, and here we can create a new transport. And here in this we do have the transport process. So first off, we select what objects we have, and here this is where we use this this ticket concept. Then we create a new transport, and in the transport we can go in and give approval parameters on what is going on. So here we have, there's a lot of things that will probably not make it and does not really make sense, but we do have options to do batch import. We can download a report here that shows you all the different parameters in the landscape. So obviously if you're just doing it for one, it's not really a big problem, but if you have a transport of 5 or 100, well, a couple of 10 iFlows, it becomes unmanageable. We can then, for each of the different iFlows, go in and say, okay, what are the objects that we have there, and are there any of those that we need to make changes to make sure that it is relevant? So we can document it, that they're different. We can automate search and replace for host name, so we don't need to remember if we're connecting from dev to QA is for host name. We don't need to remember. This would all be handled by the tool. And if you have a security reference that does not exist on the system, you'll get a warning here. One other feature is that if we have, for instance, we can tie this to a bit or to a Git pipeline, that if you want to do more validations, it can write to a file per iFlow, and then you'll get a notification up here saying, hey, there's actually a problem with this. We ran CPI lint and it gave us some problems, and therefore we need to check what is going on and if this is something we want to be used. Or can we approve it? And right now we'll just reject you approving it, so we have just disabled it, because yeah, in our system we are making a lot of not good iFlows, but obviously in a real scenario you want to have iFlows that validate correctly with CPI lint, at least when you're starting to do the transport. So as my developer, my role is done. I have done everything that I needed. I've selected my flow, I've tested it, and I've configured it as well as I know. I can then send it to approval, where a different person, and the default option is that you cannot approve your own configuration. But to make demos a little easier, I do have access to approve these things myself. So as an approver, I can go and say, okay, I want to approve this. Good. Or reject. but obviously this will just make the process a little short. It'll then go back to the developer with a note saying, hey, or an email saying, hey, this was not approved, please approve it, and then move on. Yes, so now it's okay. We have approved it, and now we can send it to import, and then it will first import it, then it will configure it, and then it will deploy the iFlow, depending on what you have set up for the different scenarios for this. And here we can see that it will, as default, make it with QA underscore, and this is how we see iFlows or this virtual tenant the most effectively. Yeah, so one of the things also here I can also here do comparison with this diff to HTML. I guess this is the standard diff that you would see, and here we'll just show the files that are different. So right now I have imported it, which could make something a little different, but this is what you would be seeing for these scenarios. And this is also the way you can do a lot of all the different comparisons. So you have the same comparison option here. You also have a message mapping report to show what's the different message mappings that you have here. Good. Now I need to go test on this virtual tenant, and just to show you that it is actually here, we can go here, open it, and we can see both the package and the virtual tenant is added here. And also here the endpoint is also added. So QA, I cannot remember. There was one other configuration that I made to show what there was a difference here. The API key, I think this was the one I made a changes, just so you see that this is happening. Okay, so now this is done, and what I can then do is, okay, so I've imported to the QA. I can then, if there's more items in my landscape, I can transport it to production. It knows the landscape, it knows the DIR number, and then the process would actually be the same thing. Here it's transporting from this system. We can start the transport here. And now as a QA person, or then you can obviously have different approvers for these different scenarios. So you would have an architect that would be approving before you go from QA, before you import to QA, and a business analyst or someone that will do approval before it is moved into production, just so there. And this could also happen that from Jira you will update that this item has now been transported and it is ready, and then the business architect in Jira could go in and say, okay, approve it and import it. So we can import it here. Right now we don't have any approval on this this transition. So it is a lot of different transitions that you have that will allow you to do this comparison. And that also means here we have the overview. We can see the transition, how something has been deployed around in my landscape. And if we just go back to the original here, so this is the first one. We do have a report here that we can generate. And this is just, yeah, one of the many reports that it is possible to create. Here we show this is the item. We show what are all the objects that is a part of this, both on the development and on the QA system. What test cases did we have, and what were the result of this latest test run for these scenarios. And then we can see the transport, we can see who approved it, and we can see something was skipped because they were already in this new landscape. So this is a large part of this process about making it easier for you to manage your integration. And then if we select this landscape now, we will be able to see this item has been deployed and it is starting, and there's a problem here, which is that so I guess, yeah, here we can see I did not, for this landscape transition, we did not start it, and this is really an important thing to be able to say, okay, yeah, there's actually a difference between what you have. So if you did not have this, you just think we have removed the design time, but someone may have forgotten all of these changes. So another question here is, you can, if you can run test cases without this, and yes, that is true. So the way this works is obviously the same way, and I think we actually did run it to begin with. We took a test case and created and ran it, and you can just say, okay, test case is here, we created this new one, we can select run on anywhere in the system, and thereby we get the messages, we get the result of how this is going on. And if you want to create a new test case, there is two ways to do that. One is you go through here, you find the iFlow here, and this is get customer. So this is where you just say here, create test case, put in some data, and then you can add in and output parameter of this. So if I need to start out on a new development, this is what I would be doing. I would be using this screen to add my input and output payload, and then I have created a number of new test cases. The other way is that you go into the iFlow here, you switch it into trace, and then you send a message onto it using your whatever tool, or let the business do this automatically. And we should now see that there is a new message being created. Burp, 27, 37. So here we have it, and with the CPI helper, we can click here. We can demo webinar. And let's also, on the item, we also have other ways of mentioning these things. Here we can see it has specified an ID. You can add multiple message IDs for this. And then we can start fetching this and start using that as our test case. So this is how you're creating test cases. Run an example, or switch the iFlow into trace mode, run some examples, take one of these messages and use it for this. We do also have this message monitoring here. Here we can go in and we can say, okay, hey, this is our message monitoring, and we can see what is going on. We can see input output payloads, and you can give access to specific users to view specific iFlows. And here we also have an option here to say record this message if we do not have CPI helper. And then we'll create the test case in the same way. We can run it as many times as we like. And yeah, this is where I also from time to time do some test-driven development. I have my in and output messages, and then I'll put them in, and I'll be using them continuously to test what is going on. One last feature, and I think we'll probably in one of the next sessions go more into details about this, is we do have in this one some Groovy scripts or XSLT, it really does matter. We have here this option, and here we can go and we can select one of the test cases that we have and one of the input and output messages for this specific Groovy script. We have two ways of running this. Either we can run it locally or we can run it on the CPI system, and then we'll get the results and we will see if it is producing the right data or anything else. And I will just, oh, that was not what I wanted. This, I can run it, I can now compare the result, and we can see based on the change of input, this makes it easier to do the test and development. This also works for Groovy, and once you're then done with your result, you just press upload, then it'll upload to the iFlow, and you can start trying out and using it in there as a way to simplify the development. But I think we will cover that more in the one of the next session. But just as a way to look at more on the aspects of this. I think we need to I do think it has a lot of advantages. It is a really good tool. We do leverage it and give you as a user an option to do your development in a Git repository. I think it should be optional for developer, and if you have these really good developers that know how to use it, then you can use whatever Git repository. We have worked with the other ones, not specifically GitLab, but Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, all of them, I guess, basically works the same way. So that is not really a problem. And the idea is here that, let's see, did I forget to start it up? I do have here. So here I have my Git repository in my IDE, and what we are giving here is we're giving you a number of artifacts that you can be using. So some templates that allow you to take the content and run it without, or upload, deploy, change an iFlow, do a lot of modifications on it. Here we have all the different iFlows, and they are continuously being updated. So if we check the version that we have, we can see the history here. Git history, show history. So here we can see that we did make a change here on this iFlow, and thereby we have all of the different data. And I think one of the really large benefits of this is that all of this is extracted. You can set up pipelines to run, and we do have here Git. So this is run in GitHub. And here we have a pipeline that is running and producing some results. So we have an iFlow with CPI helper. And this was the one I wanted to show you from inside of the Figaf tool, where you can see these runs and what they're producing of results. Good. But yeah, as I see it, this is for the really good developers that you have that are doing a lot in Groovy. Our other Groovy editor, it is okay, it works, but in here you can also go into debug. You can do a lot of other things to make this more attractive for it. So then I guess the question is obviously, what is the most important thing for you? Is it to build your own custom DevOps process that could be tailored to your organization, or do you just want to use a framework that enables you to get started really quick, and then you do not have to spend the time on building a project or building your own tool and frameworks to handle these things? And I think both is valid options. I definitely do think that this is the framework is easier. So it is pretty easy to get started with. And I do have a video here. I'll just put it into the chat that you can see. So it is, it's 60 minutes where I show you how to install the tool, how to configure it, how to run it, how to create test cases, set up landscapes, handle transport, and develop code as you saw here in this this example. So this makes it a lot easier, and this is 60 minutes. If you then want to also look at the Git, then it is another 1-2 hours. But that is also pretty simple. Just set up which Git repository you want to use this on, synchronize, and then it will publish data to it. So some of the values, obviously. So we do have the part about building your own process. Yeah, it is going to take a long time. I don't know, 200 hours definitely is a good place to start with this. You can also, and then obviously we do have the virtual tenant that allow you to save 4,000 per tenant per month. So that is also a pretty good value. And yeah, if you already have the system and or have a larger system. So the virtual tenant, I think this is useful up to maybe 3, maximum 400 iFlows. If you go above that, you are anyway at a size where you need to have all of these different complexities. I do think that the place where the value is highest is on the developer productivity, and obviously a large part of this depends on how do you do processes today, and what are they supposed to be in your organization, because I do think that quite a few of you would be using file transports, because that is let's see here, there was no one said file transports, but obviously that is the alternative, or cloud transport management. But the things that those would not give you is this understanding about who is making which changes, why they're being made, and what is the configuration that we want to apply to these things. So if you wanted to do these things yourself, then it will take quite a lot of time that users would be able to do. And as an approver, all of these different tasks is, or if you are an architect, if you need to approve something in, for instance, cloud transport management, it would be really difficult for you to see, okay, we have these two iFlow. What's the difference? Who made it? Did they change the right thing or not? And that's the challenge. The Figaf tool starts at €1,000 a month, and then you need another 300 in BTP credits to run the tool as we see it from the calculator. Obviously, if you scale up, it becomes more expensive, and so does the Figaf license. I think that was almost clear. We do have another webinar. I don't know if you have signed up for this. If you have signed up on our website, you will be, you should also be signed up for this next webinar. Otherwise, you can always go and sign up at figaf.com/webinar. The topic next week is going to be PI to CPI migration, and I think this is obviously something that is really important for you as a developer to get started on. And we will be covering 3 things. So this will be the assessment. How do you understand the current landscape you have? How do you automate the PI to CPI migration? And lastly, how do you actually test that the migration works? I think those are really good use cases of the tool. There's a free version of Figaf that covers 1 and 3, and you can use, there's a trial of 2. And then obviously the DevOps process is really nice if you have that as a part of your delivery process, because then makes it just a lot easier to handle these things. We also have a lot of other sessions, and I hope you are also going to join those. There is a Neo to Integration Suite migration, where this transport process also makes sense. We have a PI PO DevOps, which is basically the same as we have seen, or as you have seen today, except the Git, but giving you a lot of other options with renaming objects, batch uploads, etc. And then I think the last one is about developer productivity. So I think that was all I had for now. I hope you have some questions. Just put them into the Q&A, and I'll try to cover those in short time. Otherwise, thank you for attending. I hope you find this useful, and I hope you have signed up for the free trial at figaf.com and have been able to see how this would work for your integration. Let me just see here anything else. But yeah, let me know what you think, and also, do you think the platform is okay, or did you experience any problems with it? Please also share that. Um, and yeah, that was thanks for attending. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, feel free to put in some more comments, and I would like to hear those ideas and input. Thanks, appreciate it. Boop. There now some more. Okay, image resolution is low. Thanks, noted. Yeah, so right now our license is based on the iFlow in the development system. These 100 iFlows is development iFlows that is counted. If you have a split and say, okay, if you have 4 tenants, we also do count the number of tickets that you're using to manage these things. So that would have an impact on your price. But yeah, show the. I guess it's more about come with the landscape and let's find a price for you. And then obviously the 10,000 months that was for for the first 100. Then subsequent is I think it's 6,000 euros for the and then the further up you go, the cheaper it becomes. And then at some point in time, we need to just give you a price because you will be experience growth and figure out how to deal with these things. But yeah, any specific, then yeah, otherwise send me an email and I can give you a more precise quote. But yeah, the number of iFlows, the number of systems in the landscape, number of transports, I guess those are the things that has an importance. And then you're getting the testing and all these monitoring capabilities as a part of this pricing. Okay. Did I mark that as answered? Doop. Cool. Yes.